Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Ty Hauser. Let's queer up politics. Congress on the verge of passing ban of trans girls from school sports. The U.S. House of Representatives faces sharp criticism from LGBTQ rights groups after passing the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025. The bill, approved this week with a vote of 218 to 206, seeks to ban transgender women and girls from participating in school sports. If enacted, the bill would withhold federal funding from schools that do not comply. A companion bill has already been introduced in the Senate. Critics argue the legislation targets the trans community under the guise of protecting women's sports and mandates Title IX enforcement based on undefined biological sex. Transgender individuals comprise just 0.6% of the U.S. population and an even smaller percentage of student athletes. Over 400 advocacy groups, including GLAAD and the Human Rights Campaign, oppose the bill, saying it's been an intrusive focus on scrutiny of students' bodies and can invite scrutiny and harassment of any other student perceived by anyone as not conforming to sex stereotypes. As the debate shifts to the Senate, one thing is clear. This isn't just about athletics. It's about the values we uphold in our schools and society. Activists predict the Senate will pass the measure, and it is certainly the new president will sign the measure. This continues the attacks against trans and trans rights. They want to pick on such a small portion of the community just to prove a political point. It's infuriating. They wrap this stuff in language that, protection of women and girls. You're not protecting anyone in this situation. You're actually exposing people and threatening them on some level.
No, absolutely. Many of us in the community growing up, some people were aware we were different before we were, but to go after a small group in our community, we have to really be behind our trans brothers and sisters. I'm proud to be working as a volunteer with Mary It's Mary Productions, which is co-owned by Dana Davis, who's appeared on this show, as well as Candace Kane. Mm-hmm. And probably just a year ago, we did a feature called Diaper Doll, and it was a parody. And we had no idea that the right was coming in with the force that they did and would win the election. But it was about the a parody on the trans bathroom bill. So looking at this, I have to say, if anything, it's ostracizing young people. Mm-hmm. We know that the suicide rates for teens who are trans or identify as trans or LGBT is higher, and this certainly is not going to help that situation. I think we need to certainly look toward developing leaders during the next 4 years, sooner than later in our community, to fight the right and really stand in the way of things like this happening. Mm-hmm.
And I was reminded before we came on air, I'm sure you heard, but the filibuster rule still is in place, for now. So in order for this stuff to pass, it's going to require Democrats to actually get on board with it too. And that's something that, we oftentimes think that, okay, well, if we're on the left, we're going to be safe from that. But, Democrats want to keep their seat. So they might wind up supporting this stuff and not be able to break the cycle.
And I know in past shows, it's been discussed that anti-LGBTQ, or in the case of some things, anti-trans, has been in the military insurance, where they were, looking to just package it all together and say, well, right. we want to eliminate any kind of care for people who may have trans loved ones, and right. That's, or they may be trans themselves.
So, well, keep an eye on it as it plays out in Congress. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
Now let's